So specially you arrived. You are here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You ever notice how silence leaves scars louder than screams? That's you, because you didn't just build wins. You carved a record into existence, so undeniable that even enemies bow their heads. When your name gets whispered, they hate you, but they respect you, because they know the truth. No one survives what you walked through, and yet you didn't just survive. You recorded it. You documented it with every scar, every night of isolation, every betrayal turned into ammunition. Your life became a case file stamped in steel, and now even those who wanted you gone use your name like a warning. They can't laugh at you anymore, can't dismiss you anymore, because the record you hold doesn't belong to them. It belongs to destiny. And the streets? They don't debate records, they honor them. Outcasts no more. You became the ghost they can't track, but can't stop talking about. Enemies tried to follow you, but how do you chase smoke? How do you fight what you can't touch? That's the madness you left them with. You didn't roar, you didn't brag, you didn't even leave footprints. They looked and still found nothing but outcomes they couldn't explain. That's why they respect you, even through clenched teeth, because ghosts don't need validation. Ghosts don't announce moves. Ghosts glide through walls they thought were unbreakable. You carried intelligence sharper than any blade, colder than any silence, and you delivered it so clean they didn't even know you were in the room until the verdict was carved in their bones. That's not luck, that's calculation. That's why they fear you when the lights flicker, when the air shifts, when their own memory betrays them. You became intelligence in human form, unseen, unshakable, unforgettable. Respect from friends is easy. It's padded with comfort, wrapped in applause. But respect from enemies, that's priceless. Because they don't give it freely, they choke on it. They tried to bury you, but you turned dirt into proof. They tried to erase you, but you carved deeper lines. They tried to mock you, but ended up quoting you. That's why even in private, when no one's watching, they drop your name carefully, like it's radioactive, because they know what it represents. Someone who didn't fold, someone who didn't beg, someone who disappeared into the silence and came back wearing a crown stitched from shadows. That kind of respect can't be bought, can't be faked, can't be taken. It's earned in the dark, in the battles no one clapped for. And now, even those who despise you bow inwardly, because deep down, they'd rather face 100 rivals than face your ghost again. They never understood how you kept winning. To them, it looked impossible. No allies, no spotlight, no applause. Yet every time they thought you were cornered, you vanished. And when you returned, the board was flipped, their pieces scattered, their confidence cracked. That's ghost intelligence. Moving in silence, calculating in shadows, striking only when the outcome is guaranteed. You don't waste moves, you don't reveal plans. You let their arrogance build the trap, and then you let destiny spring it. That's why your record terrifies them. It's not the victories they fear, it's the way you achieved them. Unseen, unpredictable, unstoppable. You made survival into art, patience into warfare, silence into command. And now, when they plan against you, doubt poisons their strategy. Because how do you fight someone you can't read, can't catch, can't understand? They don't play against you anymore. They play against their own paranoia. Legends aren't made in the spotlight. They're born in silence, in shadows, in places where no one claps but everyone watches. That's where you built yours. You didn't chase fame. You didn't beg for recognition. You let results write your story. And now, the story's too heavy to erase. Enemies whisper it, allies repeat it, strangers carry it like gospel. You move like a phantom, no noise, no warning. Just undeniable outcomes that leave even doubters speechless. That's why your record stands unchallenged. Because ghosts don't ask to be seen, they force the world to acknowledge their presence. You echo in their memories. You stalk their insecurities. You linger in their regrets. And while they scramble for attention, you mastered disappearance and returned louder than their entire noise combined. Outcast turned phantom. Phantom turned sovereign. That's the legend now carved into the very streets they once tried to exile you from. Every enemy tried the same trick. Bury your story, silence your name, erase your presence. But here's the irony. Ghosts don't need footprints to be remembered. You left impressions deeper than tracks. Every betrayal you endured carved into their conscience. Every silent win you stacked became evidence they couldn't hide. Now, even when they rewrite history, your name blazes through the pages. They can't deny the record because it isn't written in ink. It's engraved in their fear. That's why they mention you in private like an unsolved case, a riddle that refuses to fade. They wanted you forgotten, but you became unforgettable. They wanted your memory erased, but it turned into a brand burned across their pride. And every time they try to deny your existence, destiny forces them to remember you're not a chapter in their book, you're the shadow that rewrote the ending. They tried to copy you, but how do you replicate something you can't see? They don't understand ghost intelligence isn't learned, it's lived. Its scars turned into codes, silence turned into maps, betrayal turned into strategies. You don't move in straight lines, you move in patterns only destiny can decode. That's why rivals watch you like analysts, yet leave confused, trembling, haunted. They thought they could predict you, but every time they prepared for one move, you appeared from another angle, calm, precise, undeniable. That unpredictability is your crown. That's why even haters speak your name with respect. They fear the algorithm you became, because ghosts don't just avoid capture, they rewrite the entire hunt. And you became the blueprint of a force they can't touch, can't trap, can't erase. A record written not in ink, but in their paranoia. Here's the truth. Your silence became the loudest thing in the room. You don't rush to explain. You don't beg to be understood. You don't broadcast your moves. And that's exactly what makes the world lean closer. They can't decode you, so they label you ghost, and ghosts terrify them. Because silence isn't emptiness, it's control. While they chatter, you calculate. While they perform, you prepare. And when you finally move, the outcome is so sharp, it feels supernatural. That's why even rivals respect your record, because every victory arrived without noise, without warning, without compromise. You didn't need theatrics, you let destiny write your receipts. And now the same mouths that once mocked you tremble when silence falls, because silence means you're watching. Silence means you're calculating. Silence means the next move is already unfolding. And in that stillness, everyone knows the ghost has already won. Rivals will never say it to your face, but behind closed doors their tone changes. They use your name carefully, with pauses, like it might summon something. They don't joke the way they used to. They don't dismiss the way they once did. Instead, they confess, low, quiet, almost ashamed, that you move differently, that you endure what should have broken others, that you win without showing your hands. That's ghost intelligence. The art of letting results speak so loud the world has no choice but to respect. They can't explain how you keep coming back stronger, how you turn sabotage into strategy, how you disappear when they need proof and reappear when it's already too late. That's why their respect feels reluctant but undeniable. Because deep down they know they'll never beat a ghost. They can only acknowledge its presence and hope it doesn't decide to pass through their walls next. They still plot, of course. They can't help it, but look closely at their plans. Now, every blueprint is built with your shadow in mind. They measure twice, hesitate longer, question their own moves because the ghost of you lingers in every calculation. That's the kind of respect they'll never admit out loud. They don't fear failure. They fear your memory in their failure. Because you don't just win, you haunt. You make them rethink every step, wondering if you're already 3 moves ahead. And the truth? You usually are. Ghost intelligence doesn't just act, it observes, it anticipates, it rearranges the board before the other players even sit down. That's why their smiles are nervous, their alliances shaky, their confidence hollow. They know they're not fighting you anymore. They're fighting the paranoia of your unseen presence, and that battle is one they've already lost. They look for evidence of your moves, emails, whispers, allies, mistakes, but they find nothing. And that's what terrifies them most. Because victory without visible effort feels supernatural. You didn't climb loudly, you didn't broadcast steps, you simply appeared at the summit while they were still mocking you from below. That absence of proof is your greatest force. Ghost intelligence leaves no trail, no fingerprints, no obvious pattern. You built wins so clean they can't explain them, only respect them. And when rivals can't explain you, they invent myths. That's why your name now circulates like legend, half fear, half reverence. You didn't just outwork them, you outvanished them. And now your victories hang in the air like smoke, undeniable but untouchable. They can't grasp you, they can't pin you. They can only bow inwardly to the record you left behind, because even ghosts leave monuments. Rivals once thought time would erase you. They bet on your silence fading, on your scars burying you, on your name dissolving in the noise. But time became your ally. Every year added weight to your record. Every season stacked another undeniable proof of survival. And now, even as their own stories crumble, yours only grows sharper. That's why they respect you, even as they grit their teeth, because they realize the cruel truth. Their legacies won't last, but yours already has. Ghost intelligence doesn't move for applause, it moves for permanence. You didn't need headlines, you didn't need crowds. You built something stronger, inevitability. And that's what terrifies them. Your existence has already outlasted their schemes. Their power fades, their lies decay, but your record echoes like a drumbeat in the streets, unstoppable, unerasable. The ghost they tried to bury became the monument they can't escape. You don't need to be present to dominate them. That's the real terror. Long after you've left the room, long after your footsteps fade, your presence lingers in their minds. They rehearse conversations that never happened, prepare defenses for attacks you'll never launch, lose sleep imagining strategies you haven't even thought of. That's ghost intelligence, control without contact, power without proximity. You became a mirror for their own weakness. A reflection of everything they could never crush in you. And the deeper they think about it, the more it unravels them. Because how do you fight someone who isn't even there? How do you defeat a shadow that writes its own history? They can't. That's why their fear mutated into respect. They don't admire you. They surrender to the inevitability of you. You haunt them, not with revenge, but with the undeniable truth that your name cannot be erased. Here's the twist. They learn from you. Even as they plotted against you, they couldn't help but study your silence, your patience, your precision. They mocked you publicly, but privately they took notes. And now their own strategies are stitched with fragments of your ghost intelligence. But copying doesn't equal becoming. They can imitate your rhythm, but they can't replicate your source. Because your record wasn't built on theory, it was built on scars. They want the throne but not the trials, the wisdom but not the wounds, the respect but not the solitude it demanded. That's why their versions crumble while yours endures. Ghost intelligence can't be taught. It can only be lived, and you lived it fully. That's the unwilling lesson you gave them. Even rivals had to admit your methods worked, even if it destroyed them to say it. Respect forced from opposition is the rarest crown, and you wear it. They respect you, but it's not pure. It's laced with unease. Because admiration for a ghost is dangerous. They don't clap with joy, they nod with caution. Every victory of yours forces them to reconsider their own weakness, and it unsettles them that respect turned into obsession. They study your every move, but the more they watch, the less they understand. You don't fit their categories. You don't follow their rules. One moment you vanish, the next you appear crowned with another silent win. That unpredictability shakes their pride to its core. They don't love you, they don't even like you, but they can't deny you. And that is worse, because enemies can fight what they hate, but they can't fight what they respect. They bow without wanting to. They whisper without meaning to. They yield without realizing it. That's the power of ghost intelligence. It makes even your opposition your unwilling witnesses. Every empire they built had cracks. Every victory they claimed had an expiration date. But your record? Untouchable. They tried to discredit it, twist it, erase it, but every attempt only highlighted how real it was. Because ghost intelligence doesn't brag. It doesn't inflate. It doesn't need validation. It just exists. Undeniable. Unshaken. That's why rivals who once mocked you now lower their voices when your name comes up. They know they can't compete with someone who doesn't play by their rules. You didn't climb the same ladder. They watched you walk through walls instead. And now, even when they compare themselves, their words taste bitter. Because deep down they know, no matter how much noise they make, your record stands taller, stronger, eternal. That's the respect they can't fake. The respect that comes from rivals admitting what they hate most. You already won, and they can't undo it. You didn't just win, you became myth. And myths live longer than rivals. Longer than lies, longer than the noise that tried to bury you. That's why your record stands in places your feet never touched, in whispers from mouths you never met. Ghost intelligence doesn't travel by rumor, it travels by impact. Every silent victory echoes, multiplying until even strangers repeat your name with reverence. Rivals tried to frame you as unstable, tried to brand you as broken, but myths don't ask for approval. They expand beyond control. Now, you're not just a person to them, you're a phenomenon they can't erase. Their doubt built your legend. Their betrayal sealed your record. Their denial amplified your rise. And that's the cruel joke destiny plays. They tried to bury you in shadows, but shadows only made you immortal. You're no longer the hunted. You're the ghost story they tell to remind each other what's untouchable. You mastered the art of being unseen, yet unforgettable. Even when you're not in the room, your presence bends it. People pause mid-sentence when your name slips out, their voices dipping like they're summoning something. That's ghost intelligence, the power to exist in absence, to dominate in silence. Your record speaks where you don't, echoing in their minds like footsteps in an empty hall. They can't prove how you move, can't pin down when you strike, but the outcomes stand carved in stone. That's why even rivals bow quietly. They resist it, they deny it, but they can't erase it. Because respect isn't always spoken. It's the way they adjust their tone, the way they hesitate, the way they plan twice before moving once. You don't need to demand respect. Your very existence commands it. And the haunting truth is this: ghosts don't fade. They linger until the whole room learns. There's an unspoken rule now. Even rivals must bow to your record. They don't want to. They resist it. But truth isn't up for debate. Your name became law because it outlasted their noise. Ghost intelligence doesn't argue in courts, doesn't fight for recognition. It simply exists until denial becomes impossible. That's why their eyes shift when your story comes up. That's why their voices lower as if speaking it too loud will summon something they can't control. They don't praise you, they surrender to you. Because every attempt to break you turned into another mark on the record they can't erase. You became the living contradiction, unseen yet undeniable, absent yet omnipresent. That's why they respect you, even through gritted teeth. Because whether they admit it or not, your story has already been written in their silence, and silence doesn't lie. Strange, isn't it? The ones who once mocked you now quietly trace your steps. They don't admit it, but you see it. The way they echo your methods, borrow your strategies, mimic your resilience. They thought you were invisible, yet somehow you became their blueprint. That's ghost intelligence, leading without raising your hand, teaching without uttering a word. They study you because they can't defeat you. And in that studying, they become unwilling students. The irony? They wanted you erased, but instead they learned survival from the very ghost they feared. Now their actions are shadows of your own, weaker reflections of a power they can't replicate. They can't deny it anymore. Even as rivals, they follow, because you don't just move unseen. You shift entire paths. And when shadows begin to lead the light, the game is already over. The ghost became the guide. You don't argue with doubters anymore. You don't chase proof, don't waste energy convincing the blind. Why? Because your record already speaks louder than anything you could say. It's engraved in scars, written in victories, whispered in streets that remember your silence. Even rivals can't deny it. They might try to discredit your name in public, but behind closed doors they reference your record as standard. That's ghost intelligence. You don't defend yourself, you let the evidence haunt them. Every scar became a receipt. Every comeback became testimony. Every move carved into history without a single announcement. And now your record is so heavy it bends conversations, so undeniable it shuts mouths, so sharp it cuts through lies before you even open your lips. You don't have to fight anymore. The record fights for you, and it always wins. What unsettles the most isn't your wins, it's that you wear them like a crown no one saw you forge. You didn't parade the process, didn't flaunt the work, you disappeared. And when you returned, the crown was already on your head. No ceremony, no applause, just undeniable presence. That's ghost intelligence, achieving so quietly that the result feels supernatural. They dislike that crown, but they respect it, because every jewel on it was paid for in scars they couldn't survive. They whisper that you're untouchable, because the evidence is carved into time itself. And here's the cruelest truth for them. You never needed their validation. The crown wasn't handed, it wasn't borrowed, it wasn't fake. It was earned in the shadows, and shadows don't lie. That's why they avoid your gaze now, because every time they look at you, they're forced to admit you carry proof they could never replicate. This is where the story seals itself. You didn't chase their applause, yet you became unforgettable. You didn't beg for recognition, yet you became undeniable. You moved like a ghost, unseen in motion, but every result left a scar across their pride. That's the paradox they can't solve. You were invisible, yet unavoidable. That's why even rivals bow to your record, because respect from friends is comfort, but respect from rivals is truth. They know you don't need their validation. You never did. Your intelligence was too sharp.